Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show, all about movies.
You're listening to the Jan Price Show, and today my guest is director, producer, writer, Tom Dolby. He's a triple threat, and we're talking about his brand new movie, The Artist's Wife. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
It's a pleasure having you. This is just a lovely, lovely film, and what a great cast. What a great cast. You have Lena Olin and Dern. What could be better?
Yeah, we were so lucky to get them. They have incredible chemistry together as husband and wife.
They truly do. They truly do in this movie, and I want to get into more about the performances. Can you just tell our audience a little bit what the synopsis of The Artist's Wife is?
The film is about a couple living in the Hamptons. They're both artists, but he is a very famous artist, Richard Smythson, and his wife, Claire, has given up her career for many years to support him and be by his side. And he is developing very early stages of dementia. And so as she is realizing this, she's also realizing she has this urge within her to revisit her own artistic career. So it's really about that double journey that happens when we have a tragedy in our life and how we can try to make something good come out of it.
And it's a beautiful performance by Lena Olin. It's one of the best performances she's had in years. And I loved how you focused on her, even though it's her husband who's the famous artist who is going through dementia. This isn't a movie about dementia. It's not a movie about Alzheimer's. It's a movie about a woman. I mean, for me, at watching it, obviously, is about this woman's journey of rediscovery of herself in her midlife. And I loved that because I'm beginning to see more movies about this. And maybe it's because we have such a plethora of wonderful actresses that are in midlife. And so usually in the past, lots of times their careers were done and over with, and they got character roles. But I just recently had the director of Susan Sarandon's new film that was on the show, Blackbird, and so it's lovely to be seeing this. It seems like a renaissance.
Yeah, we have. If I can say, I mean, we have so many wonderful actresses, but also I feel like in our culture today, how many incredibly strong women do we have? I mean, I think about Nancy Pelosi all the time, for example, or even Kamala Harris, who's a woman who's over 50, who's entering an incredible chapter in her life. So I think it's really rich material to explore.
Exactly, and I love how you are exploring this. And so this movie is deeply personal for you too, isn't it?
It is. I experienced my own father having dementia right around the time when I was coming up with the concept for the movie. And so that really, that impulse to include the dementia as an important sort of plot point really came about then. And I saw what my mother had gone through in terms of supporting my dad and how that journey was very lonely and very difficult at first, when you don't know if your spouse is just acting a little strangely because he's getting older or if it really is something more serious. And I think given that is such a lonely journey, it was very important for us to show that on screen. And I really hope people will see it and be inspired by it and feel like they're less alone in whatever they might be going through, whether it's supporting a spouse with dementia or some other ailments, or just the normal tribulations of getting older are difficult, right?
Right. Right. And, and they, it's also, there's a part of this film that also is interesting about redemption, that the relationship, Bruce Dern has an estranged daughter. And do you want to talk a little bit about that and how that played so significantly in this film?
Yes, I had noticed an interesting thing with my father where he didn't have an estranged family, but he had the desire to sort of revisit the past, whether it was talking about it or even like, can we go back to that place? I remember this, and it would be like someplace from 40 years ago or something. And so that was partially how this idea of Bruce's character came into being, in terms of Claire going into the city and trying to reconnect with Angela and discovering that that Bruce has, or that Richard has a grandson, which was, an incredible discovery. They were so estranged that they didn't even know about this. So it really is a beautiful thing. And it's not easy, because the daughter does not exactly welcome her or him with open arms. It takes her a while to get used to the idea that he might be back in her life.
Yeah, it was very, very touching, and and it's just really well done too, because this movie is not syrupy or sappy or anything like that. It's real.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a true realism in this film, which I really appreciate it, because so many of them can fall into, more of a maudlin type of scenario. And this film does not do that with any of the relationships. They're very, very real. I also, I have to applaud Stephanie Powers, who we have not seen in a film in a long, long time. And Lena Olin, who both of them were willing to show a more mature woman's body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead. Talk about that.
That was a really, and it was interesting that this theme has come through, because we didn't, as we wrote the script, we didn't set out to say like, oh, let's come up with as many scenes where people can take their clothes off as possible. But, in terms of the plot and just normal life, we show a mature relationship, and the fact that people still go to bed and people have sex, and that's a beautiful thing. And, have seen where, they're getting ready for, she's actually going to take a nap, and it's very cute, because he says, oh, I think a nap is out. He has something else in mind, and he's about 80 years old, but I mean, we all still have our desires, and I love that we could acknowledge that in a movie. And Lena is just stunning, but I think at any age it takes some courage just to show yourself, in your underwear. And then with Stephanie, it was also just playing this character who is a performance artist who's very free with her body. And we loved the idea that she was, who was shedding her clothes for this sort of artistic photo shoot. And she's standing right next to all these models who are in their 20s, and she looks absolutely gorgeous. But there's something it's not just that she looks gorgeous. There's something so freeing, I think, about her feeling the power and the freedom to do that.
I agree. And, so often I felt that was very brave of both of these women to do this. I really did. And they both look stunning. They absolutely stunning. So, I think for a lot of women who are in mid-age, it gives us encouragement that you don't have to let yourself go, and you can still look great after all these years. So let's talk about the casting. How did you, because these are two actors who are in their prime even Bruce Dern's been around for so long, and he's such an excellent actor, as we've seen over and over and over again, but still making movies at his stage in life. And Lena Olin, who we have not seen in quite a while, I think, on the screen, also is a superb actress. So, and their chemistry is really wonderful in this film. So talk a little bit about how you attracted each one of them to this movie.
Yeah, we went out to Lena with the script, and she just really connected to it. It was interesting. She was in Sweden at the time. She lives most of the time in New York, but she was in Stockholm doing a theater production, and she hadn't done, so it's kind of interesting, she hadn't done theater in a while. And so perhaps the idea of new beginnings and new challenges were kind of on her mind. And so she was reading the script and really connected with it, and said that she wanted to do it. And so we started talking, and as you build this as a director, and with my casting director, you're sort of building out a family. And so you think, okay, well, who would have possible chemistry, with this person or whatever. And so I thought of Bruce, and I've always admired him, and his daughter Laura Dern was actually a big fan of the script and of my work, as I am of hers. And so we went to Bruce, and it was great, because I texted Laura that day, and I said, well, we went out to your dad for Richard, and she said, oh, I'm going to call him immediately. He has to do this. So it was wonderful to get that support. But just the first day on set was incredible, because you have two, especially with an indie film shooting schedule, you have two actors who've never worked together, never even met each other. And, they're thrust in, they get to 5 minutes or something to chat. And then they get to the set, and they have to do, they do their first scene. And I think one of the first scenes we shot was like right towards the end of the movie. And it became very clear as the day went on. It was like, wow, there is some crackling chemistry between them. It just that they both have this feistiness and this sort of life force that is actually very youthful in a sense, in that they're just both very passionate about life, and they brought that to their characters, and it had an incredible chemistry in how they interacted with each other.
They really do, and that's very, it's definitely on the screen, that great chemistry. What I also liked about what you did with this, with Lena Olin's character, you didn't make her, because she decided to give up. She was also an artist and gave up her artistic career to support her husband and his endeavors. You don't feel like that she is a weak character because she chose to do this. You don't feel like you have to have sympathy for her in that sense of, women who give up their careers, people, sometimes they can fall into, again, a stereotype of, feeling unfulfilled and not happy with their lives and everything. And you don't get that sense with this character. She made that choice and is happy with her choice. It's in this film, but go ahead.
Until she's not, if I could say that, she made the choice many years ago, I think because of necessity, and I think perhaps she was intimidated by the art world, and then her husband's career was taking off, and there was sort of a financial necessity, as we've seen with so many artists, with Lee Krasner and Jackson Pollock. She was like his business manager. I mean, he couldn't function without her, being there, and so Lee Krasner had to give up her career in a sense for many years, or slow down at least. But I do sense that Claire, Lena's character, made the choice and was content with it for many years until suddenly she's not. Something just kind of, she feels an internal pull to get back to painting, and she has to honor that.
Yes, but I think that, for watching it, obviously the trigger is what's going on with her husband. Because he's going into the past because of his dementia.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, you really do have this sort of dual impulse to. It's almost tying up loose ends. I mean, that's a very simplistic way, perhaps, of putting it. But it is, in reconnecting with the estranged daughter and getting to know the grandson, and then her going back to to her creative past. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, we should all be so lucky as to be able to do that in our third act, if you will.
Exactly. And then yet at the end of the film, and I don't want to give away the end of the film, she really, a true act of love at the end of the film, because she subjugates. I mean, she has rediscovered her artistic talent, but she subjugates that for her husband. I hope I'm not really giving anything away, I hope. and that's a real act of true deep love, because she came, she came out of, it's love without the ego involved. It's ego-less, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, I think of caring for somebody with a disease like dementia, somebody who's your spouse. I mean, it is so egoless, and it is so, there is a sense of sacrifice. And yet I don't think, this is something Lena has talked about a lot in Q&As at film festivals and so forth. She never saw it as sacrifice. She did see it, like you're saying, as an act of love and as an act of devotion. And it doesn't mean she'll always do it. Here we're being very mysterious about what she does. See the movie to see what happens at the end. But I think it is a really beautiful thing. And in talking to people in that community, and our neurologist consultant said, her character does exactly what the spouse is supposed to do in this situation, is you protect the dignity of the person that you love. And I think that's a really beautiful thing.
It is a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing. And then that's what makes the movie a beautiful movie. A good movie for me is one where I feel obviously emotionally moved some way, whether it's just a comedy, whether, laughing and it's a funny movie or whatever it's supposed to be. But this movie, I did cry at the end. But more importantly, the movie lingered with me. It was one of those movies where, sometimes you see a movie and they say, oh, that was good, and then that's it. But this movie lingered with me. It's one I kept thinking about, and going back to, and just not just because we were going to do this interview today, but because it stayed with me. I thought it was just beautifully done. The cinematography, let's talk about that a little bit. And the house, loved the house. And how did you find that house?
It's really funny. The house actually used to be owned by some friends of mine, like more than 15 years ago. And they had actually sold it, but it had always been in my head as sort of the, when you write a screenplay and you're working with your collaborators, you have kind of an imaginary house in your mind, but you sometimes ground it in like an actual house that And so that was always the house that I imagined them being in. And we looked at all these modern houses and we finally circled back and it was like, why don't we check out whether this house is, whether these owners would be willing to rent it out. And as luck had it, they were away for the winter and they were very, very willing to let us inhabit their house for a few weeks.
How wonderful. Now, did you shoot the interior scenes also in the house, or was that, because I know that you had lots of, in the credits, a lot of different locations. So I was curious as to what was shot where. So where the Christmas scene, was that filmed inside the house?
Yes, yeah, we did everything that you see inside the house is actually inside the house, and that's always it's always such a great thing. It's challenging to do because you're in a very tight space. You don't have the luxury of being on a sound stage, but you get such a beautiful sense of realism. I mean, that day those shots near the end of the film when it's snowing outside, that was a day when it just was coming. The snow was coming down, and we hadn't even planned those moments, but I had them call over we had sort of a holding house next door where everybody was staying and had their dressing rooms and so forth. And I said, just bring Lena over. And, the costume people said, well, what do we put her in? I said, it doesn't matter. Just any of the sweaters, we had so many sweaters because it was a winter movie, any of the sweaters. And we just shot those really quiet moments. And I didn't know exactly where they would go in the film, but they're so perfect at the end when she makes that important decision. So you get that luxury when you're shooting in a real location. And we did shoot some of the gallery stuff and some of the museum stuff on a stage, which was also fun. You have a certain freedom with that as well. But yeah, the locations were really important. It's such a visual film. It's being about visual art. It really, working with our cinematographer, we just felt it was so important that every frame of the film be, like a beautiful photograph or a beautiful painting.
And it truly is. And I love the fact that you filmed it in the winter. Now I'm from the East Coast. I'm from the New York area, New York, New Jersey area. And I miss winter. I love snow. Everybody thinks I'm nuts, but I do. And now being in California, I miss it. So I was just like, oh, it's so nice to see snow. It's just good. I always go to Sundance every year so I can get my snow fix for a week, just to get back out there again. But I love that you did, and also the symbolism of that too. The symbolism of the winter was perfect. I don't know. Were you planning on filming it in the winter, or were you just decided to film it in the winter because the house was available in the winter?
No, we absolutely were planning on doing it in the winter, and that was a challenge. I kind of setting out and writing the script with my co-writers. I think we didn't quite realize what a challenge that would be, and you're also not guaranteed snow every single day that you shoot. So some days we had to bring in artificial snow. It was important that it was this sort of landscape just blanketed in white, and that it absolutely is, like you're saying, a metaphor for what's going on inside his head.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And also the spring is coming and the rebirth.
Yes.
too, for Lena's character, being reborn, definitely from that too. I also, the score, let's talk about the score, because I love that. And I love that you, at the end, you had the wonderful Carole King singing. So let's talk about the score a little bit.
Yes, I worked with Jeff Grace, our composer, on the score, and he was really incredible. And we wanted this sort of minimalist sense. It being winter, it just felt like we wanted to kind of keep the score relatively simple. But then we also had a lot of fun in terms of the source music, like the Carole King song at the end, which I just love, and credits. And bringing in, I felt like we wanted to bring in music from all different eras, because I felt like when you have a mature couple and then you have this issue of dementia, and we've talked about going back to the past, they're sort of bringing in, they have influences from every era in their lives. So I love that. I love that idea that, some of the music might have been something she listened to, when she was in college or when she was in her 30s or whatever. And the Carole King song it's a cute story. We had gone to her through her agents or her manager, I think, and had not gotten an answer. And we were kind of waiting, like, oh, should we ask again? And one of my producers says, just have Tom write one of his letters. And I'm sort of famous for writing these letters to like actors and I guess now musicians. And so I wrote this sort of fan letters to Carole King and said, I just love this song and I love you. And I've listened to you since I was, 10 years old, and my mom played your songs in the car. And the next day we got word, Carol is happy to let you use this. And, it was a reasonable price. And we were just so lucky to have her, because to me, she is such a symbol of exactly what the movie is about. Somebody who is still creating at this stage in her career. And that's so exciting.
Yes, very definitely. It was a great way. Okay, I got to talk about your end credits, because ever since I was a child, my older brother had a friend who was an actor, aspiring actor. And he told me when I was 10, the movie's not over until all of the credits have run. And so I have been an avid credit watcher since I was 10 years old. The movie's not over until the credits have run. And so when I go to the movies with friends, when we ever go back to the movie theater again, but I always tell my friends, like, whoever I'm going to see the movie with, I always stay for the credits. So if you don't want to stay, you go leave, and I'll meet you later. But I love the way you did these credits. It was because, for so many reasons, it was very creative, the way you did the credits, but it was so easy to read too. Than just scrolling, the way where they always, just scroll. But they gave you something to look at, the artist's rendition of these characters in the movie, but the colors and the way that you cut it up into blocks. So it was very readable, and you paid more attention to each person that was involved with this movie, which is great, because that's why you want to stay. You want to honor them, because putting a movie together is definitely a major project with multiple people. So who came up with the idea of doing the squares and the colors? And everybody definitely watch the credits.
Yeah, I did actually. I can take credit for that. It was funny when I sort of explained the concepts to everyone. It was like, okay, we're not totally sure what you're talking about. What do you mean different colors? And like it divides down the middle. And I just had this idea. It's like, okay, we're starting our opening credits with the red and the yellow and the blue, and it's very simple and primary colors. And then I just said I want the end to be like this explosion of color and these illustrations that had a sort of retro feel to them, but also felt very realistic. And so they sort of take you through a little bit of the journey of the film, and kind of, I loved exactly what you're saying. I'm so glad that was your experience, because I think everyone who worked on the film is so important. And so, having a little bit of that content of the different illustrations going by, I think that makes it an enjoyable experience for people.
It really does. And I love the fact that it ends with you and your parents and who you dedicated it to. So I just love it. Where can people see this movie? And everybody should seek it out. Where can people find this movie, Tom?
Yes, you can see it on demand. It's on Amazon and on Apple TV, iTunes. And you can also see it through virtual cinema platforms, which is sort of a new thing. Movie chains are doing their own online streaming. And we have those all collected. If you go to the artistswifetickets.com, you can go to that website and enter in what city you're in, or we also have links to Amazon and iTunes and everything. And you can see it on whatever platform you want.
Wonderful. Everybody seek out The Artist's Wife. Tom, thank you so much for being on the show. What a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You can listen to The Jan Price Show whenever and wherever. You can go to thejanpriceshow.com where all my shows are archived. You can also go to the iHeart Podcast Network, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play. And please go to The Jan Price Show on Facebook and like our show and follow us there. And you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Jan Price Show. Thank you for listening.
Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show, all about movies.